2025 has been a pretty interesting year for real estate and property management in Spokane. 2026 is going to be a pretty wild ride, I think. First, let's talk about what rental rates have been doing in the area. I'm going to talk about Spokane, through the Valley, Liberty Lake, and I'm also going to touch a little bit on Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene. I'm just going to look at some pricing on rentals, tell you where I think things are going, what they've been doing this last year, how it's impacted our business, and how it's going to impact 2026. At the end of this video, I'm going to just barely mention something that the city of Spokane City Council, they're having a meeting at the beginning, like on the 12th of January, what they're going to touch on. It's predictive, so I don't know exactly what's going to happen at this meeting. More videos will come out about that when they pass or don't pass what they're talking about. So my name's Brian Johnson. I'm a senior property manager at Windermere Lease Source Property Management. We have a lot of units under management, over 1,000 doors. I price a lot of units, so I have my finger on the pulse of what's going on rental prices in Spokane. Zillow is where the game is being played for rental pricing. I know people on the real estate side, the sales side, complain about Zillow's estimates because they're wildly inaccurate. And I can see why, because that's a predictive model. There's a lot of manipulation going on. On the rental side, they're basically the estimates. They're not estimates. They have a lot of data on their side about what landlords are currently asking and how long those units stay on the market. I know that because we do this. I get about, in the summer, I would say I get about 700 to 900 leads a month. 85% of my leads come from Zillow. In the wintertime, we drop down a little bit. We're going to be around 400 or 500 leads a month. And again, same stat. We're looking at about 80 to 90%. Might say average, let's just say 85% of my leads are going to come from Zillow. The rest are going to come from some of the other sources like apartments.com. I'm going to get some off of realtor.com and, of course, our website. And then we have about 25 other websites we advertise on. Ones that you've heard of, like Trulia and Redfin, they don't get anything really. I mean, we're talking a couple of leads a month. The game is being played on Zillow. That's where the data is at. So that's where we're going to go right here to look at the numbers. But I will say this, these numbers aren't always accurate. And so I'm going to show you the inaccuracy. So it's really kind of tough. If you're just an individual investor out there, to price your units accurately, if you're just looking at some of this online data, because you're going to see, sources that say two different things, even on Zillow. So I'll show you those differences. I guess I have a benefit because, like I said, with the number of doors over 1,000, and I'm pricing those units for rent, I do have a lot more insight and info and statistics to use, and just simply understanding and seeing how long our vacancy rates are and how hard it can be to fill units if you're just a little bit off on pricing. And I also see what happens when we do adjust our pricing and how fast units can then get filled. Zillow is really the place that I go to for pricing my units and looking at the average or median pricing. So right here, this is on Zillow. This is just Spokane in general. This is a general number right here. What you're looking at here, the average rent in Spokane, this is, for a 3-bedroom house. So let's break this down. This is a 3-bedroom house in Spokane. This is the whole city is $2,100. Look down here on the right. See this dark blue line? This is the trend right now. So since October through December, you can see the pricing has been going down a decent amount. Now, there is some seasonality going on here. Of course, this is the slowest time of the season for all rentals. So you're going to see some pricing going, pricing destruction or pricing decreasing going on for sure. But this started earlier in the summer for us. And I don't think it's just seasonal. I think we're seeing some adjustments in pricing just due to people getting priced out. I think a lot of tenants are frozen in place. We've seen pricing on rentals basically going up like this since the start of COVID, and I think we're starting to see some adjustments. How long that's going to last, I can't predict it because there's dueling things going on. There's pressures on one side because of, nationwide, when you have massive deportations, that means there's less people renting doors, like renting units, and that affects the market. How much does that affect Spokane County, this area in general? Time will tell. But as those numbers, as those deportations keep going up, that will start affecting the rental market. Every person that comes into the country needs a room. They don't always need a house, but they need a room. That puts pressure on the market. So as those people leave the country, that is also going to put downward pressure on the market. On the other hand, the government passes policies that makes it very difficult to build housing. That, then that puts pressure for things to become more expensive. In Spokane, where are the lower priced condo developments going on? They don't exist. The other side of the state in Olympia, they have like the Growth Management Act and other policies that make it very, very difficult to build not affordable housing, but lower cost housing. And so when you don't have enough of that, the pricing on that, it just affects everything. Look at where my cursor is, 118 available 3-bedroom houses in the city of Spokane. But if you just drop right over here into Zillow itself, I sorted this by 3-bedroom houses, city of Spokane. Right here, you can see it's 221 rentals available. So you do have competing information. So which do you look at? It's very, very tough. Feel free to reach out and send me an email. My email address is right here. If you have a unit that you want to ask me about pricing, feel free to reach out and I'll help you with that. Let's look here at the 2-bedroom apartment in Spokane. We're looking at $1,386 is the median or average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment. It does show a little spike if you look at this blue line of going up since November. But how much are we talking about up? November, it was $1,267 up to $1,386. I don't know. That's a pretty decent jump. But again, how much do we trust that number? Because the numbers aren't always accurate. But I think, maybe there might be a little bit of, that might be a little bit true in just the city of Spokane. But in my experience, we have been lowering rates on units across the board, offering specials, 1 month free, half a month free to try and get them rented. I know when I'm seeing a vacancy for over 30 days and we start dropping the rent maybe by $100 or even $150 a month, and we're adding in a free month, that's when it's going to pop and we're going to rent that out. So let's look at the valley right here. Now, here is the 3-bedroom house in the valley. That median rent is $2,300. And again, you're seeing that trend line. It is going down in the valley. If we look at the 2-bedroom apartment, we're seeing the exact same thing. Starting in October, we're seeing the trend line going down on pricing, where it's $1,346 for a 2-bedroom apartment. There have been some big complexes that have had a lot of vacancies that put downward pressure on the market. I've had some fantastic 2-bedroom units that I've really struggled to rent in that $1,200 range. I'm talking some really beautiful units, and it's been tough. We've been having to lower it. So I'm seeing a lot of activity where it becomes positive and we're renting them out when we're below that average of $1,346. Now let's just drop over to Liberty Lake. Now this is sort of I like to include it because it's such an outlier market. It's such a small market, but you're looking at a 3-bedroom house in Liberty Lake is just under $2,200 a month. You're seeing a slight uptick over here with 5 available rentals, and that number is probably a little bit low again like the other one. But I would say, I've been seeing Liberty Lake pricing going down since the summer also. But it's a solid market. Liberty Lake, everyone that lives there, they're right across the border from Idaho, so they can hop over there for the cheaper gas, cheaper lifestyle, cheaper everything. It's surrounded by water and mountains and a freeway. So it's very unique. Lots of people just driving around on their golf carts. It's a pretty unique community, so you can't really compare that to the whole Spokane County region. But I like to include it because I have a lot of investors there. And the 2-bedroom apartment, we're looking at $1,883 with 6 available rentals. I know that number's a little low because there's a big complex that has a whole bunch of rentals in Liberty Lake. But I'm seeing myself in the Liberty Lake region. I'd say the more of an accurate, number that I can fill a unit for a 2-bedroom is going to be around that $1,600 range, not this $1,883. Now let's hop over to Post Falls. I'm starting to include a lot more North Idaho content for rentals. We're spreading out our company over into North Idaho a little bit. I have some owners over there. So I am going to be including more of this content. We're looking right now, the 3-bedroom house in Post Falls is $2,150. We're seeing a real decrease in pricing here on this trend line with 26 available rentals. And then look at the 2-bedroom. This is, again, I'm going to show you something interesting here on the 2-bedroom rental, $1,643 with a slight uptick on those 2 bedrooms, but see this number here, 27 available rentals. That is not a true number because if we pop right over here into Zillow itself, if you look in Post Falls, I sorted it by 2-bedroom apartments. There's actually 157 available rentals, 2-bedroom apartments in Post Falls. That's a really high number. There are some really big complexes that have opened up in Post Falls that have a lot of vacancies. So those are, putting a lot of downward pressure on the market. Big complexes, with 20 or 30 available units, that's going to put pressure on the market to keep those prices down, which is nice because I want to move to Post Falls. I don't want those prices out of whack myself. Just being a little selfish there, but that's just the truth. So let's look right here in Coeur d'Alene. Coeur d'Alene, the 3-bedroom house is saying you're about $2,300 a month. Says there's 44 available rentals. And then on the apartment side, you're looking at a 2-bedroom apartment. They're on the $1,538 price range. And it says there's 51 available rentals. But let's just take a quick look here. In Coeur d'Alene, remember I just said 51 available rentals. But if you look on Zillow, and I sorted it accurately, you're actually looking at 94 available 2-bedroom rentals in Coeur d'Alene. So again, how do you price this yourself? These numbers, be very, very careful. If you have a vacancy for more than just a couple weeks, you need to start putting that pricing in the downward move. Then you're going to fill your unit. A vacancy is way more expensive over 2 months or 3 months than it is to substantially lower that rent. If you're at $2,000 a month, of a 3-month vacancy, $6,000. If you lower your asking by $150 or $200 a month, that seems substantial, but just do the math. $200 a month is $2,400 a year. If you fill that thing quickly versus the $6,000 vacancy cost, I would be lowering those rents and filling those units. Being greedy in real estate never works. It's not really generous, but just be smart about the market and do the math. Lower those rates a little bit, fill your unit. Obviously, you want to be selective on your tenants to pick great tenants. There are great tenants in this area, so you can be selective and pick some great tenants. Lowering that price will give you more tenants to pick from, and then pick the best tenants that you can, obviously. Now, the city of Spokane is meeting on January 12th to screw up real estate even more. In the last year, we've had some things go on in the state. We had rent control that was passed. I think it's 9.7% is what the announcement was of what we can what we can raise rents by on the maximum amount. Now, I know that sounds pretty reasonable. I have owners that call me and say, oh, I'm not worried about a 10% cap on my rental, pricing. I'm not worried about that. And I say, well, yeah, you live in California and you don't know how the world works. What happens is right at 9.7 or 10% rent cap sounds like puppy love. Yay. That's pretty reasonable. We can all live around there with 10%, cap on what you can raise rents by. Count on that number to lower, and we're going to go from puppy love to wolves, and they're going to be eating us. Because when that number goes down and we hit 5%, and it will happen in the next few years, the game changes significantly. They can pass the law by making it look generous. Like rent control is going to be capped at 10%, so they can pass it. Once it's passed, we all know this, these laws never go away, and then they can make adjustments to the law, and they will be lowering that number down in the next few years. I'm going to say I guarantee they're going to do it because that's just what their inclination is going to be to do. If they hit 5%, what that is going to do is that is going to guarantee owners are going to have to raise their rents every year. You can't fall behind if there's a rent cap. If you fall behind, you will never catch up. And then when you go to sell your property, you're going to get less money to sell or when you sell it because people buy based on the amount of income the property brings in. And if you've capped it and you're going to be substantially lower when what the market rate is, and the new owner also can't raise it because they have to honor current leases, that lowers the price of the property. So, as they lower the cap, they are going to guarantee that owners are going to keep pricing their units higher because they're just going to have to do it. Plus the fact that they have policies that don't allow the right type of construction anywhere in this area. Then we have a shortage of housing, a shortage of doors, up goes the pricing. So the council's meeting on the 12th, and let me just kind of read this. The ordinance is called, I'm not going to show it to you because it's just a bunch of text that will put you to sleep as bad as it did me. Ordinance C36808, Pathways to Eviction Diversion for Spokane. So one of the things, there's going to be a requirement. I'm reading, so that's why I'm looking off the screen. Requirements for landlords to provide tenants with notice about eviction prevention resources at lease signing and issuing a notice to pay or vacate. So when you sign the lease, you'll immediately be given information on if you're in an eviction, how you can work with the state or the city and have resources to work with you on the eviction. That's not really that big of a deal. Providing information, that's fine. We don't, statistically, it's a pretty small number of people that you're actually going to be evicting. So providing that information is fine. A mandatory 30-day good faith participation period in dispute resolution and rental assistance programs before landlords can file for eviction. So that immediately extends the eviction timeout by a minimum of 30 days. The clever tenants that know how to rig the system, they can extend this even further. So just added a whole nother month to the amount of time it takes to evict a tenant, which is very, very costly for owner. And it says specific notice service requirements. And this is hilarious. The goal is to prevent homelessness, fine. Restore landlord-tenant relationships. The government has absolutely no ability to restore relationships. All they're going to do is throw a bomb in our laps and everyone's going to get pissed off. That's impossible for the government to restore relationships. And maintain safe rental housing using grant funds. Count on fraud to be going on. This means nothing. This is meaningless information. They're going to pass something that means nothing other than hurting people. And what I've heard is on the 12th, when they have this meeting, it's going to be the same day that they're going to be voting on it. So everyone will pack the room. A few people will get to speak. A bunch of people are probably going to be pretty pissed off about this, and you're going to get some people that are going to promote it. And basically, the city council can turn around and vote on it, and then everyone forgets, except for us that have to deal with the laws. I'm going to keep going on this year. I'm going to be providing a lot more videos on everything the city council is passing, how it affects your rental properties. I'm going to be doing a lot more content on Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene, on the rental property and the stats and any sort of ordinances that they're going to be passing on the rental stuff also over there. So, like and subscribe to this channel, and you'll be getting this information, and I hope it helps you guys. Have a great 2026.